Tonight is the final night of the convention, and Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris will formally accept the nomination for president.
Of course, our Kyle Clark is spending his week at the DNC and joins us now live from Chicago. And Kyle, you had a chance to talk with a guy whose number one job, I think, is getting a strong lead in every night to Next at 6.
Our friend Lester Holt of NBC News, yes, our partner in broadcasting each evening on 9 News. We had a chance to talk today about the journalism and politics and where they intersect at these conventions. And, you know, we've spent some time this week talking about one of the challenges of covering Kamala Harris's campaign fairly is that she is accepting her party's nomination and has not yet rolled out all of her policy positions because of the very late start of her campaign. What we have not spent a lot of time talking about this week is the separate challenge that journalists have in fairly covering Donald Trump, who has the propensity to lie about things big and small, as in big like whether the 2020 election was stolen, and small as in whether Kamala Harris's crowd sizes are faked with AI. I asked Lester Holt if the media have learned our lesson about how to fairly and accurately cover Donald Trump's misinformation and rhetoric that could put people like election officials at risk.
But it is our responsibility to say things, anything, and from any person that is not factual, especially that has a large impact, it's our job to hold people accountable for what they say. This particular candidate, of course, has been a challenge, I think, certainly for the way we've used to covering politicians and the things that would be 5 alarm fires or 1 alarm fires now. We have to gird ourselves against writing things off as normal that aren't normal.
This is something that we've talked about more so at the local level over the years in Colorado, about how to best cover politicians who make indecency and misinformation their brand, as opposed to the politicians who might occasionally say something that is inaccurate or that doesn't sit right with people, and whether that ends up in a situation where we hold some politicians to a tougher standard because they have more responsible behavior. Tonight on Next, following NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, more of my conversation with Lester about the state of journalism in America, and he says that it's understandable if people are really truly worried about it, and he welcomes that conversation, Tom.
You get that vibe in Chicago. I mean, obviously it's all going in one direction at this point. The bounce, people talk about post-convention bounce, but we still have about 11 weeks to go before Election Day. There's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. Do you sense Democratic momentum from there in Chicago?
You sense Democratic enthusiasm, right? You sense hope and optimism replacing some of the dread that honestly was being expressed behind closed doors in the waning days of the Biden campaign. The very first night of this thing, I asked the Colorado Democratic Party Chairman Shad Murup, when will we know if what you're seeing for Kamala Harris and in the polls and anecdotally, whether this enthusiasm is for real or if it's a bubble? And I expected him to say, give it a week, give it 2 weeks or whatever. And he said, we probably won't know until Election Day. That tells me that Democrats are taking nothing for granted and still view themselves as the underdog.